I know this isn't American history, but our neighbors up north have amazing soldiers and stories as well. And this is a regiment story from Canada, the Black Watch Regiment. July 1944, southern Normandy, outside the city of Caen. A ridge rises from the foreland. Its name, Verrier Ridge. By nightfall, it would be soaked in Canadian blood. But this story isn't just about a ridge. It's about the men who walked towards it. There were dock workers from Montreal, students, office clerks, sons of immigrants, French and English speaking, and all wearing the same dark tartan and the same red hackle in their cap badge, also known as a feather. The Black Watch of Canada wasn't a massive army, it was a regiment, which means these men trained together, ate together, knew each other's jokes, shared cigarettes in the rain, and when the war came, they went overseas together. The 2nd Canadian Infantry Division, including the Black Watch, landed in Normandy in July 1944, weeks after the initial June 6 landings. The beaches were secured, but inland, the real fight was raging. Normandy wasn't wide open fields like you see in movies. It was hedgerow country, thick embankments, narrow lanes, machine guns hidden behind every rise, and every field was a trap. The Germans held high ground south of Caen, and veteran SS Panzer divisions were waiting. They were battle-hardened, well equipped. The Canadians had to break through, and that meant taking Verrier Ridge. Whoever held the ridge could see everything, and whoever attacked it had to cross open farmland under direct fire. The order came down, advance in daylight. The men stepped off near villages like St. Andrew-sur-Orne, Sandré-sur-Orne, correct pronouncement, sorry. Reed fields in front of them, the ridge rising in the distance, and then the machine guns opened. Mortars began dropping, artillery started walking towards them, and entire sections were hit before they reached halfway. Men fell, medics crawled forward, and officers tried to regroup units that were already shredded, and still they advanced. Not because it was going well, but because the order had been given. By the end of the day, the Black Watch Battalion was shattered. Over 300 men stepped forward, more than 120 were killed. Dozens more wounded, and many captured. It remains one of the bloodiest single days for a Canadian infantry battalion in the entire war. The regiment was nearly destroyed in one afternoon. Montreal would feel the loss for decades. Entire neighborhoods had empty chairs at the dinner table. Historians still debate whether the attack should have happened the way it did. Was it rushed? Was there enough artillery support? Were they sent forward too soon? Those questions remain, and what isn't debated is the courage of the men who advanced. They didn't hesitate, they didn't break ranks, they went forward. You might think a regiment shattered like that would be pulled out permanently. It wasn't. Replacements came in, young men stepping into boots that were barely dry. The Black Watch rebuilt while still in combat, and then they kept moving. In late 1944, they fought in the Battle of Scheldt. This wasn't dramatic battlefield maneuvering. This was mud, flooded fields, cold rain, and German fortifications built into dikes and canal systems. It was slow, grinding, exhausting warfare. But clearing the Scheldt meant reopening the port of Antwerp, which meant supply lines for the Allied advance. It was one of the most important and most overlooked campaigns of the war, and the Black Watch were there. In 1945, they moved into the Rhineland, crossing into Germany, pushed through defensive lines in thick forest and urban streets. The war in Europe was collapsing around it, but they still had to clear every house, every trench, and every pocket of resistance. Victory didn't feel cinematic, it felt tired. Then came the Netherlands. The Dutch people remembered the Canadians, and they still do to this day. Matter of fact, I watched a documentary on this while doing my research, and there was a Dutch woman who still could remember the songs the Canadians were singing in the shop when she was a child. The Black Watch helped liberate towns that had been under occupation for years. For civilians who had known hunger and fear, the sight of Canadian uniforms meant survival. It meant freedom. For the men of the Black Watch, it was the first time they saw what they had endured all that bloodshed for. It's May 1945. Germany surrendered. The war in Europe was over. The men who survived returned home. But they were not the same boys who had left Montreal before. They had crossed wheat fields under machine gun fire. They had buried friends in Normandy soil. They had rebuilt a regiment from near destruction, and they had kept going. When people talk about World War II, they talk about armies, generals, strategy, but war was fought by infantry, by squads, by men who stepped forward together, men who sacrificed everything for the guy next to them. The Black Watch of Canada nearly ceased to exist on Verriers Ridge, but they didn't vanish. They rebuilt, they advanced, they liberated, and that red hackle, or feather, still means something today, because history moves forward on the boots of men like them. Hit that like and subscribe button for more forgotten history with Matchstick. See y'all later.